Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. My name is Claire Dewhurst. I'm the Director of City Nation Place. And I can see that people are now joining for the session. And as soon as we have most of you in the room, I will introduce our other speakers. But welcome to this session. The City Nation Place is delighted to be running in partnership with Reputation Lab. And today we will be looking at the reputation economy and how you can navigate nation reputation in a changing global context. And I was delighted when I saw the long list of people who've registered for this session, that many of you are representing nation brands. Some of you are also representing city and region brands, but understand the importance and the impact of the nation brand on your own work. So as I said, my name's Claire Dewhurst. I'm the Director of City Nation Place, and I'm delighted to have with us today Fernando Prado Abuin from Reputation Lab. And also after Fernando has presented, we will be joined by Issam Lotfi from the Royal Institute for Strategic Studies in Morocco, and Maria Lipiatska, who is the head of Brand Ukraine with the Ministry of Affairs in Ukraine. So welcome, Maria. Welcome, Issam. I look forward to talking to you after Fernando's presentation. And just one more word on logistics. As Fernando is presenting, if any questions come to mind in our audience, please do type your questions in using the Q&A option, which you should see at the bottom of your screen. And I will try and introduce those questions into our conversation. But now Maria and Issam and I are going to turn off our cameras, and I'm handing over to Fernando to share with us the learnings from this year's study.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Before we begin, I would like to thank City Nation Place, and especially Claire and her team, for organizing today's webinar. I would also like to thank our guests, Issam Lotfi from IRES and Maria Lipiatska from Brand Ukraine. Thanks for joining us and sharing your perspectives on country reputation management. And of course, thank you to you all for being with us today. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I will share some of the key findings from RepCore Nations. After the presentation, Claire will moderate a discussion with our guests for practical implications of this year's findings. Well, let me briefly walk you through today's agenda. We will start an overview of the main findings from RepCore Nations 2026, including this year's global reputation ranking, and some of the most significant shifts, winners, losers in country reputation. RepCore Nations generates a wide range of analysis, and there are a lot of management insights that we could bring to this short presentation. Choosing the focus for today's webinar was not easy. It was a real challenge. The platform, the reputation, the RepCore Nations platform also includes analysis of supporting behaviors in order to understand what drives every specific intention to buy, to visit the country. Future readiness of countries to today's challenges, and new analysis we have included in order to see how countries face climate change, eruption of artificial intelligence, etc. We have also the analysis of the touch points that was so interesting last year in the global conference of City Nation Place. We do familiarity analysis, reality versus perception gaps, as we did last year in this webinar, sector associations with specific countries. In this year, we have even analyzed specific brands and how the different countries are associated with specific commercial brands. We have done country-specific management priorities. Well, those are many of the different analyses we could have chosen. But for this session, we decided to concentrate on one topic that is particularly relevant in the current international environment, which is the country of origin effect, or what we call the made-in effect. So apart from the overall presentation of the ranking this year and the movements, we are going to make a specific analysis on this topic. Finally, we will conclude with the discussion that Claire has already presented. let's start by saying that at Reputation Lab, we define reputation as an emotional concept reflected in feelings of admiration, respect, and trust towards a country. Well, because people make decisions based on those perceptions, reputation influence behavior. This is what we call the reputation economy. And those behaviors, such as visiting a country, investing in it, buying its products and services, studying there, or recommending it to others, are very important because they finally create economic value. This is basically what we mean by the reputation economy, the growing impact of perceptions on real-world behaviors and outcomes. Well, as a result, reputation has become a strategic asset, and not only for companies, but also for countries, influencing their ability to attract support, opportunities, and economic value. We are talking about tourist arrivals, foreign direct investment, exports. The question, therefore, is not whether reputation matters, but how much. And, how much value can we create, or the reputation of a nation can create. The next slide provides two examples of this. If reputation influences behavior, the next question is whether those effects can be measured. We have used the data from the first 4 editions of RepCore Nations. We have analyzed the relationship between country reputation, tourism, and foreign direct investment. We took the databases from RepCore Nations and the databases, available public databases from UN Trade and Development for the foreign direct investment data, and UN Tourism for tourist arrivals in value. No? The results show the clear pattern. On average, a 1-point increase in reputation is associated with a 7.2% increase in the value of tourist arrivals and 1% increase in the value of foreign direct investment. Well, the precise impact vary across countries. It's not exactly the same, but the conclusion is clear. Reputation is not just a matter of perception; it creates measurable economic value. As we now are completing this 5th edition of RepCore Nations, I guess that for the global conference, or even sooner, we will update this data using a 5th year of RepCore Nations data. But the conclusion is still clear. Reputation brings value, and we need to understand that value. In order to manage that value, we need to measure. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. And for that, at Reputation Lab, we develop RepCore Nations. If country reputation, is creating this value, we needed a methodology in order to measure that country reputation. So what we did, we applied the same methodological approach that we normally use to measure corporate reputation of companies, for the analysis of countries. Basically, we have to say that we define reputation as an emotional concept reflected in feelings of admiration, respect, and trust. These sentiments are measured directly through our overall reputation indicator that we call the reputation score, or the rep score. Well, but it's very difficult to manage feelings, to manage emotions. So we needed to explain those emotions with rational variables. To understand, what drives those feelings, we analyze specifically 22 rational attributes covering social, cultural, environmental, political, and economic aspects of a country. These attributes, we group them in 5 dimensions: a dimension of institutional quality, a dimension of quality of life, another of ethics and responsibility, level of development, and human factor. You can see in this chart all the 22 attributes, how they are framed in this model. Well, then we have, it's not in this chart, but we have a third group of indicators that focuses on supportive behaviors. This allows us to connect reputation with value creation. by measuring intention to visit, to buy products, to invest in the country, to study in the country, work in the country, live in the country. So at the end, these variables, these supportive behaviors allow us to connect reputation and value generation. Together, these three elements make RepCore Nations a country reputation management. This is not just a ranking. It's important to say that today we are not going to talk about the expectations, but the reality of how we manage is that we are able to offer both the importance of each variable and how every country is perceived. So we can connect those two and say, and decide and define what should be the priorities for every country in order to manage its reputation. Well, before looking at the results, let me briefly highlight the scale of this year's analysis. RepCore Nations 2026 is based in more than 124,000 individual country ratings collected across 36 countries. Well, everything that you see colored in this map is where we have been fielding. So it's a very relevant database. We didn't analyze only the 60 countries that we are going to show in the ranking afterwards. We analyzed the reputation of 74. But, in order to have a common ground, we have decided from 2022, and we have followed up on these presentations, that our ranking focuses on the 60 largest economies in the world by GDP. And we evaluated the reputation of those 60 largest economies among the general population of the most industrialized countries, of the countries from the G7. So the scores that I'm going to present today are based on perception of G7 economies about the 60 largest countries. This provides a robust and internationally comparable benchmark of country reputation. Well, let's us now turn to the 26 global country reputation ranking. No, I'm not going to say like in the Oscars and the winner is, but well, let's try to have an analysis of what has happened this year. Well, the most notable development this year is Japan's rise from the 8th position that had last year in 2025 to the first place. We are in a period marked by geopolitical tensions and uncertainty, and Japan appears to have benefit from perceptions of stability, quality of their products, innovation, predictability. So, right now, Japan is the most admired country in the world among the population of the G7 markets. More broadly, we can say that the countries at the top of the ranking continue to be predominantly stable democracies that generate high levels of admiration, respect, and trust among international audiences. If you see the ranking, you see a lot of European countries at the top, but we have also very relevant countries that are also strong democracies like Japan, Canada, Australia, that has grown some positions, and New Zealand. Looking at the regional picture, Japan leads Asia Pacific, Canada, the Americas, Switzerland, Europe, Peru, Latin America, and Morocco, both Africa and the Arab world. We will speak about that with Messi Lofi afterwards. At the other end of the table, the world's largest powers continue to face reputational challenges. If you see here, the United States remains in the weak reputation category, China also remains weak, and Russia continues to register a poor reputation. Well, there is one final point that is worth noting. The average reputation score across the 60 countries analyzed has declined by almost 1 point this year. It's quite a relevant decline for the average of all the countries. And we are going to explore a little bit more on the movements from last year to this year. If we come to how country reputations evolved in the past year, the most important finding is not the movement of any individual country, but what I'm telling you about this overall broader trend, across the 60 countries. In reality, it was 0.86, the average fell of all the countries. You see over there the evolutions from last year, and you see a lot more reds than greens. International audiences appear to be becoming more critical and less trusting in a context that we all know, marked by geopolitical tensions, armed conflicts, and even economic uncertainty. Among the countries showing the largest improvements, we have to mention Russia, China, and Japan. Those are the ones that stand out, the highest increases that we have seen this year. Japan's rise is particularly significant because it builds on an already strong reputation from the previous year and helps explain the move to the first place in the ranking. If we want to see elements that make, strong the reputation of Japan, we see things like the quality of products and services, the perception of safety, of educated and reliable people, of a quality education system, of a lot of possibilities, leisure, culture, gastronomy. When we analyze the reputation profile of Japan, we see lots of strengths and several attributes in which it arrives even to the excellent situation. At the other end of the spectrum, Israel records the largest decline. Its reputation has fallen this year by 7 points, 7.2. But if we analyze the last 5 years of the study, Israel dropped almost 16 points since 2022, which means coming from an average reputation, a moderate reputation, to a poor reputation, losing 20 positions in 5 years. This reflects the severe impact that the conflict in Gaza has had on the international perceptions of the country and perceptions of not defending human rights, etc. Well, another country that is a major loser this year is Iran. Iran has fallen is the second largest fall this year, and well, in this case, is falling to the last position in the ranking and becoming the country with the weakest reputation among the 60 economies analyzed. This year, for the first time since the beginning of the start, Russia is not the position 60. In this case, Iran has taken that position. Another notable trend is the decline of many European countries, including most of the Nordic nations that have been always in the top of our rankings. Well, this situation of all those drops, if you see on the top a lot of drops on those European countries with very strong reputations, it has helped other countries to grow. For example, Australia is winning 7 positions without almost improving the overall indicator with a stable level. The exception in Europe is Italy. Italy has grown clearly in reputation, 0.8, but this has helped the country to win also 6 positions in the market. Well, finally, despite the gains recorded by China and Russia, both countries continue to have weak or poor reputations, while the United States is not showing any meaningful recovery from last year's decline. Remember that last year's main news was the collapse of the U.S. reputation. Well, this year we see a stable trend. That means that it didn't recover. Normally, in this kind of studies, when you have a sharp decline, it would be normal to have some kind of comeback. But in this case, this is not the case. So, well, basically, let's compare familiarity and reputation. This chart compares those two elements, being well known and being admired. And the key message is simple: being known does not mean being admired. The United States, China, and Russia are among the most familiar countries in the world, yet all three have weak or poor reputations among G7 publics. By contrast, countries such as Taiwan or Singapore achieve strong reputations, despite being very little familiar to international audiences. Power may attract attention, but it does not automatically win hearts. Being known helps, being admired, I believe, matters more. Well, having come to this point, as I mentioned in the introduction for today's presentation, we have selected a specific analysis on how the country of origin influences the sales of products and services. Well, first thing that I wanted to do is to compare, as we normally do, reputation, our RepScore indicator, with intention to buy products. And the message of this chart is straightforward. Country reputation and purchase intention move almost in a lockstep. The relationship is exceptionally strong and almost perfectly linear. The better a country's reputation, the greater consumers' willingness to buy its products and services. Well, having said that, we have gone deeper in this analysis in order to try to find and need to introduce a new indicator to analyze this made-in effect. So we have introduced this year the made-in score. Made-in score is Reputation Lab's new indicator for measuring the commercial value of a country's origin. While country reputation captures the overall admiration, respect, and trust, the made-in score that we have created focus specifically on the attractiveness of its products and services. How have we done this? Well, we have combined three new attributes: the impression created by a country's companies, the trust in the made-in label. When we see a product that says made in nation, we trust that more. And finally, the willingness to pay more for products that are originating from a specific country. Well, together, these three attributes, we have created a construct, a statistical construct, and together these three attributes capture the commercial value generated by the country of origin perceptions. Well, just to give you a hint, what are the countries that have the highest scores on these made-in labels? On made-in score? What are the top or the strongest made-in labels? Well, this ranking closely resembles the country reputation ranking. You know, Japan is number one in one and in the other. And this confirms the link between reputation and country of origin value. However, some countries perform even better when we focus on products and services. You know, in this case, Italy rises from the 7th place in the reputation ranking to the 2nd place in the made-in ranking. And in the case of Germany, this is even more relevant because it changes from the 20th position in the reputation ranking to the 4th position in the made-in ranking. This suggests that both countries enjoy a commercial appeal that exceeds what their overall country reputation would predict. So, well, let's have a look on the relationship between those two variables. We have in this chart on the vertical axis, the reputation, and on the horizontal axis, the made-in score. Furthermore, we have to say that they go hand in hand. No, the country reputation and made-in score are very closely related. Countries with stronger reputations tend to achieve stronger made-in scores. But, you know, we have exceptions. As I mentioned Germany before, but we could also mention the US. If you see on that chart, if you take the US, it's above average in the made-in score, while the reputation is much lower. It should be in the same level of India or Kazakhstan in terms of reputation, but it's in the same level of other countries in terms of how people appreciate the brand. So, well, by contrast, countries like Greece or Egypt have the opposite effect. You see that their overall reputation is higher than, or their made-in indicator is lower to what it should be based on that overall reputation. Reputation matters, but some countries are more effective than others at converting it into commercial. And that is precisely why we developed the Made in score, in order to have a complementary indicator in order to work on that element of creative value and price premium for the products of a specific country. So, we have made the numbers. The first thing I have to say is that 1 point increase in reputation translates into 0.68 increase in willingness to pay more for a product from a country. What we have, and how can we arrive to this point? Well, in the previous slides, we showed that country reputation, and with this data, it's clear, and the Made in score are very related, no? But this analysis helps us to understand how that relationship works. We have used a mediation model, and we have examined whether country reputation creates pricing power directly or through the commercial value associated with the country of origin. If there is a variable that mediates. The results are clear. Most of the effect of country reputation on consumers' willingness to pay a premium is channeled through the Made in score. In fact, 90%, 95% of the reputation to premium effect is mediated by the Made in score. And this confirms that the two indicators are complementary. Reputation builds the overall emotional appeal of a country, while the Made in score captures how that reputation translates into commercial value for products and services. Let's put it simple. Country reputation creates pricing power through the strength of its country of origin. Let's explain it with a simple chart. This table compares consumers who would not pay a premium for a product because of its country of origin with those willing to pay a 50% more, a 10, 5, 0% more. If we make the difference between the 15 and the 0%, well, for countries seeking, to strengthen exports, international competitiveness, and the value of their products and services, the Made in score provides a practical indicator of the economic value generated by the country reputation. The Made in score shows the largest difference between the two groups, the group of the 15% and 0%. So we see that with our reputation indicator, and we have even selected the key attributes that normally should impact on this, the quality of products and services of the country, and that the country has well-known brands and companies. And the three of them have a substantial change in the price premium, but the indicator that has the highest substantial change, 11.8, is the Made in score. Basically, this is telling us that reputation creates value, but the Made in score shows how that value reaches products, services, and companies. So we have developed an indicator it's going to help us to work specifically on the items related to the Made in effect. Well, just some takeaways, because we have an interesting conversation right now with our speakers. I just would like to say that, like companies, countries have a reputation that can be measured and should be managed. A country's reputation has an impact on its economy and its conditioning conditioning the behaviors of stakeholders. We have quantified the impact of reputation in tourism and in foreign direct investment. Among the rational levers of country reputation, ethics and responsibility has been the most relevant in previous years. Still haven't mentioned it before, the key dimension this year also, but institutional quality has gained some importance this year. Japan, Canada, and Switzerland are the nations most admired by the G7 population, and when the great powers are not very well perceived, are still poorly perceived. We said that the power doesn't win hearts. Country reputation creates economic value beyond tourism and investment. It also strengthens the attractiveness and competitiveness of the products and services associated with a country. And finally, the made in score captures the commercial value of country of origin and explains how reputation translates into trust, preference, and price premium in international markets. And now, before I hand in, I just would like to give very, very brief highlights of the two countries, one slide per country, just to make the conversation a little easier. Let's start with Morocco. Morocco has gained 3 positions this year, has a moderate reputation, no? And continues to strengthen its international reputation and remains the highest ranked country both in Africa and the Arab world. One of the most interesting aspects of this case is that we have been able to track its evolution for more than a decade through our collaboration with IRES. In that period, Morocco has maintained mainly all of its traditional strengths, like the ones you see here: natural environment, friendly people, rich cultural and culinary offer. But at the same time, gradually, at the beginning, it didn't have those strengths, but gradually it has developed new strengths linked to economic development, institutional quality, and international credibility. It's a very interesting success story. This year, results continue that positive trend. Morocco gains 3 positions in the ranking and records improvements in several important attributes, including success in sports. Well, the Africa Cup influenced that, efficient management of public resources, and being perceived as more technologically advanced. As Morocco's reputation has strengthened, so has the level of support the level of support is receiving. You see here, intention to visit plus 2.5, intention to invest by plus 1.9, intention to buy products plus 2.5. Those are very relevant improvements of the reputation of the country and supportive behaviors. The other country the other speaker we have today is Ukraine. Ukraine remains one of the most remarkable reputation stories of recent years. Following Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukraine's emotional reputation improved significantly. Its resilience, determination, defense of the democratic values generated a lot of admiration, trust, and respect among Western publics. However, as we discussed last year, when we had the opportunity to participate in the International Brand Ukraine conference in Kiev, the challenge was to build stronger rational foundations for that emotional support. While Ukraine's emotional reputation had risen sharply, perceptions of most of the rational attributes remain considerably weaker. Well, the 2026 results suggest that this gap is gradually narrowing. Although Ukraine's overall reputation score has remained stable this year, broadly stable, several important rational attributes have improved, helping to create a stronger and more sustainable foundation. And you can see here, improves technologically advanced plus 3.8, friendly business environment plus 2.8, safety, which was the weakest element because of the war, has improved 4.4, and Ukraine maintains its strengths in strong and respected leaders, respect for human rights, educated and reliable people. So the good news is that apart from this, creation of that foundation that can help developing the brand Ukraine positioning, there is a behavioral lift. We see that there are better supportive behaviors, increased intention to visit points, almost 3, intention to invest, 2.4 points, intention to buy. So with that, I leave you with Claire and with our speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. It's fascinating stuff. I'd like to invite Maria and Isam back into the room. And if you want to stop sharing, Fernando, then our lovely faces will fill more of the screen for people. Is Isam not with us?
Yes.
I think he's just coming through. There he is. Hello. It's taken a little while to come back into the room. So, and remember, in the audience, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. And I can see one coming in already, which I will get to in a second. But I want to ask some questions of you first, Isam, because I know that you have been called away, so you can't stay for the full length of this discussion. So just first of all, is there anything that Fernando has shared around that overall global picture that surprises you, Isam?
First of all, on the outside, I would like to extend my warm thanks and appreciation to City Nation Place for coordinating this important discussion and for giving me the privilege of contributing to today's exchange of strategic roles reputation. What I find particularly interesting in Fernando's finding is precisely the fact that reputation is not solely correlated with economic or military power. One might naturally assume that the most powerful countries like United States of America, China, enjoy the strongest reputation, yet the data suggests otherwise. Another thing that caught my attention is in this year's result is Japan's rise to first place after ranking 8 previously. It was 8 in the 2025 edition. This is a very interesting development because it reminds us that reputation is not a static asset. So a country reputation can improve significantly when progress is made simultaneously across several dimensions such as quality of life, innovation, governance, trust, cultural influence, and international attractiveness. At the same time, the Japanese case illustrates another important lesson. Reputation is dynamic and can evolve much faster than we sometimes assume. While sustained reforms and positive achievement can gradually strengthen a country's image, reputation remains fragile because a single major crisis, conflicts, governance failure, or reputational incidents can rapidly undermine years of efforts and lead to a sharp deterioration in international perception.
Yes, thank you. I think it's true that we are seeing the reputation of countries shift in ways that it didn't in the past, which obviously has got something to do with the availability of media and the stories that we see carried across the internet. But in terms of your role, with the Institute, can you explain it a little bit? Because what we're really interested, of course, this data is all very interesting, but what are you going to do with it? How will you communicate this research to your government in ways that are useful?
So for participants who may not be familiar with our institution, I would say that the Royal Institute for Strategic Studies is a Moroccan think tank that established in 2007 by His Majesty King Mohammed VI, and it is placed directly under His Majesty authority. So its mission is to provide strategic foresight and policy-oriented analysis to support decision-making at the highest level of the state. The issue of reputation has occupied a permanent place in our institute work for more than a decade. This interest stems for why we have worked on reputation because in 2014, we have conducted a study on Morocco's intangible capital. And this study demonstrated that nearly 3/4 of the country's wealth derived from intangible assets, among which reputation constitutes key components. Building on this finding, IRIS initiated its collaboration with Fernando Prado in 2015 to assess Morocco's reputation abroad. The study initially covered 18 countries considered strategically important for Morocco's foreign policy. And now we have a sample of 29 countries in 2026. Currently, the use of research, the main findings are translated into a policy paper addressed to His Majesty the King. The report identifies Morocco's strengths and weaknesses in terms of external perception and formulates some recommendations aimed at strengthening the country's international reputation. In addition, each year we organize a seminar. We involve also Reputation Lab and this seminar is bringing together the main public and private stakeholders involved in promoting Morocco's image abroad. The findings are also shared with institutions responsible for economic and territorial promotion, including the Moroccan Agency for Investment and Export Development. In this regard, the study serves as a genuine strategic monitoring and policy guidance tool. As for Morocco performance, I will say that the country reputation trajectory since 2015 has shown sustained and significant progress, and perception have improved, particularly in areas related, because we have an image of emotional reputation more in 2015. From 2015 to 2018, our reputation was produced by emotional factors than rational. But now we see that there are a lot of progress in institutional with the perception of institutional equality, ethics, transparency, the level of development. And this improvement reflects the numerous reforms implemented under the leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, because Morocco has become in many respects a country of continuous reform. Furthermore, Morocco benefits from a strong image of stability, credibility, and reliability in a region often perceived as volatile. Its balanced and moderate foreign policy, its commitment to international cooperation, and its constructive approach on regional and global issues have contributed significantly to strengthening international trust. And in 2021, Morocco has launched what we call Morocco Now investment and sport brand. This is like an industrial brand. It is not a unique brand of Morocco. And in ours, we every year we say that we believe that the country would benefit from a development of comprehensive and unifying brand Morocco capable of bringing together all sectoral brands and their coherent and long-term narrative.
Thank you. And I know that you may have to leave us shortly. So thank you very much for joining us. And I don't know whether I dare say this because I haven't checked to see whether you're in the World Cup. Is Morocco playing in the World Cup this year?
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah,
I hope
we-
you do well and that reflects well on your brand. And I promise I will learn I will follow them avidly, Isam. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Maria, let me come to you. I mean, was there anything that you found surprising in the overall results?
Hello, and thank you so much for having me, Fernando, Claire. It's always a pleasure to join your discussions. I agree with Isam that it's a good positive trend that hard power, military power does not directly translate into strong reputation. But I couldn't help but look more at the lower part of this year's reputation score. And for me as a Ukrainian, this is a worrying trend that reputation of the countries that do not respect basic rules and rules-based world order continue to grow up. And I think this is something we have to look up to. And of course, this research and many other international research and trends show that the world is moving more to like real politics, and it might people might think that or have a temptation to invest. People, governments, societies, countries have temptation to invest more into hard power, into military, economic areas. And I always reiterate on every possible international platform that this is not always, or this is not the right path. Values, emotional reputation, ethics, responsibility, respect for human rights matter, especially for everyone, but especially for our parts of the world. And I can't reiterate enough that these are not just empty concepts, and Ukraine's case is a good example. And we've talked a lot about it on multiple occasions. We dedicated the whole conference this year to the topic of values and place branding, which are based on values and ethics, as not only a nice branding exercise or a narrative that resonate, but as a national security instrument, because Ukraine has shown exactly that if you fight for what's right and it resonates with global audiences, then you will get all the support you need, including military and economic and hard power support. So I think that was like my main observation and a message which I just couldn't help but voice.
Well, thank you. I think you're right to raise it. And I think that, everybody looking at that data with regards to Russia should be concerned. And I think it speaks to something that, I hear a lot in my conversations, which is the rise of disinformation and misinformation, and how countries that rely on democracy and try to have the right values, need to have strategies to counter this and to speak up for that. So thank you for sharing it. Let's shift to a very practical question, because I think one of the challenges for any country or city, when you look at city rankings, and they're in charge of their place brand, and they have to speak to their stakeholders who say, well, I've seen this ranking and we've gone down 2 points. And how do you explain that? And the position on the ranking isn't necessarily obviously the be all and end all of the strategic advice that you can take from it. And so Ukraine is down a couple of points, but there are changes in a way that you see as positive. So how do you go about communicating that with your government? And, what ideas would you give to other places who have that challenge with rankings?
Yeah, this is indeed a challenge sometimes. So, because if you look just purely on the rankings and they're like drop in 2 or 3 positions, then I don't know, your stakeholders, your government might ask, so what you're doing wrong, or what should we do more? But I think what we really should focus and look at are very specific rational dimensions, and also complementing like my previous reply, that I believe that both rational and emotional reputation are important, because I think in today's world still people like associate or resonate more with like really values-driven communications, and that is equally important as rational reputations. But I'm also happy to see that Ukraine has started to strengthen its rational foundation, as we talked, Fernando, with you on multiple occasions. And maybe I'm jumping to another question, but talking about very specific arguments and or results of the reputation score, which I use to communicate with different departments in our government, as well as like business community and civil society as well, is, for example, made in or attractiveness of country of origin rankings. And I'm happy, Fernando, to see that you've added this methodology to your this year's ranking, because in Ukraine's case, I think we've used it very intensively to advocate and to inspire Ukrainian companies to look abroad, to explore export opportunities, because very often communicating with business circles and business society inside Ukraine, I heard hesitations or even fear to use proactively or extensively made in Ukraine brands because of war-dominated global narratives, and fear that it might be associated with, I don't know, like interruption with supplies or all the security risks connected to the war which is happening on our territory. But the data which Fernando has shared with us, and actually some of other research we've conducted, shows the opposite, that it's actually is attractive and can add even more like value to the price, etc. And I think this is a very good example when data helps to overcome some hypotheses or stereotypes or fears which are irrational. And in general, I think all governments and policy decisions should be backed up by data, and Reputation Lab provides very great arguments and data for that.
Thank you, Maria. Let's start talking about the product of origin findings, Fernando, in particular, because we have had a question through from Mark Mobbs in South Yorkshire in the UK. Hi, Mark. And his question is whether there's any qualitative data behind your rankings. He's intrigued to see that China scores low, but in fact, what we see around the world is that the West seems to be reliant on Chinese goods and investing in China. So that just seems to be a disconnect. But I think his other thing is, how do you dig into what we actually mean by made in? Because, for example, the example he cites is Volvo, where that brand is a very Swedish brand, but obviously it's made in different places all around the world. So perhaps you could just address that for us.
Well, in terms of first of all, talking about China, China is, if you analyze the reputation of China in the last 5 years, it's a steady growth, a continuous growth. It came from a very low position, and year by year, the perception is better. If we connect with our new indicator, the made in score, China is one of those markets that has a much better position in the ranking when you go to the made in label than with the overall reputation of the country, a general admiration, trust, and respect. So I think everything matches when you do the analysis. It's true that we see in our records that the great powers, and that includes also the US, are not winning the heart of consumers around the world. And right now, a Volvo car, although the company has bought by a Chinese company, the Swedish brand is going to be stronger in terms of commercial effect than the Chinese brand. That doesn't mean that there is no content on the Chinese brand and that cannot be overcome through time. But the reality of the data is this. And qualitative analysis, well, we have, in our work, we do, depending on the stakeholders we analyze, we mix a lot of quantitative and qualitative analysis. For this specific research, we are talking about a pure quantitative analysis, but the attributes and the variables that we are using come a lot from our qualitative research in order to construct the indicators we finally have. I don't know if I am answering the question.
Yeah, no, I think you are. And I suppose it's interesting, isn't it? Because you didn't specifically say, would you buy Volvo because you like Sweden, for example. You're asking whether your familiarity, your knowledge of that country means that you're more likely to buy products that come from that country. And, we do see, we were hoping to get Peru on this call, for example, who have a very successful made in Peru license as part of their nation brand strategy. We know that Costa Rica has a very successful nation brand licensing scheme, as does New Zealand, for example. And I guess, that answers that question really. If somebody sees a country and thinks that they have the right values and then believes that made in label implies those values, then that might answer the question. And I think that was one of the questions you asked, wasn't it, Fernando? I think I saw on one of your charts. Could you just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, well, in order to develop this made-in score, we wanted to explain why consumers prefer a product from a particular country before another one. And we tested several things. On the one hand, the impression they have about the brands coming from the company, the perception of well-known brands, respected brands, etc. On the other hand, we tested the pure made-in label. Do I trust something that has been produced in this country or that other country? And finally, the willingness to pay a premium price, which is very relevant. And we didn't only stay at the level of asking, would you pay a premium price? But we went a little bit deeper on that question. How much would you pay? A 5% more, a 10% more, a 15% more? So with that, we could do afterwards our analysis in terms of interpret how that works. At the end, we can demonstrate that reputation builds value. We see this straight line of reputation, admiration, trust, and respect versus intention to buy. But in order to get more into the detail and to explain, for example, the price premium, this new construct that we have built is more helpful for us. And that can explain why, for example, Germany has a strong reputation, but, strong, close to average. It's in the 20th position in our ranking. But, made in Germany is still very, very strong as a
because of the facets of their reputation.
Companies that are underneath that experience of quality of products in the past, etc., etc. So, there are things that this new indicator help us complement that. And we see that there are countries that are very admired, and this is very good for soft power, for being taken into account in the multilateral institutions. It's good for attracting tourism, for having people wanting to come and visit or live in the country or work in the country. But when we want to go specifically to the commercial side, we can add some new elements to the analysis that can help us we work for a lot of companies. Reputation Lab, it's a company based on corporate reputation management. And we work for countries as one of our line of business, but we need to connect this made in other.
I agree. And
it help to the companies.
And it will give place brand teams another argument for the value of their work with the private sector. We have another question coming through, which I'll come back to in a second. And please don't forget to put your questions. But I wanted to come to you, Maria, because before the call, you and I were talking about the fact that you're on the road at the moment because you are planning for the end of the war, and you are planning and preparing the tourism infrastructure and the strengths of tourism, because this study has helped you believe that the data suggests that is a good thing to be doing. But can I come to this product of origin question as well? Is that something that Ukraine, the brand Ukraine, might consider, that applying that product of origin branding to your exports?
Yes, let me start from the last question. Absolutely. I think, and I hope that with this year's data, we can go even deeper into made in Ukraine country of origin effects. And we are actually looking into both Peru's and New Zealand's experience as well about licensing. And actually, Fernando, you made really great example and case of made in Germany. That's exactly the advantage when you specifically work with very concrete associations of made in, because and hi Mark, greetings from Ukraine. Glad to see that you've joined our discussion today. Made in China might be still popular, but for very different reasons, right? For cheap price, affordability, etc. While I think their methodology or conclusions which Fernando and his team is trying to make is that people are willing to pay more for more valued brands, right? Country brands as well. So we are looking into these examples to build Ukraine's own model for sure. And if there anyone on the call who might have different models from the one of Peru and New Zealand, please let me know. I'll be happy to catch up. But coming back to the travel angle, when we received first time the reputation lab analysis of Ukraine's reputation, of course, willingness to visit Ukraine is historically low, and of course, safety is the main reason, and nobody can overcome that. I totally understand all the risks associated with traveling to Ukraine at the moment. So we've never proactively invited people to come after the full-scale invasion happened. But we also are hopeful and that the war will be over one day or another. There is no other way. All wars end and all empires end as well. So there is hope in the end for all of us. But Fernando's data lead us to very interesting conclusion. And I know, Fernando, that you've warned me to be very cautious with these results. But given the quite significant increase in Ukraine's reputation, I think it was 10.9 points over since 2021. It means also based on your correlation between reputation growth and income of tourists, that Ukraine can have income in tourism at the level of 7.6 million people a year, which is 3 or 4 times more from the amount of people who visited Ukraine before the full-scale invasion. And when we started to have this conversation with state tourism agency, with the governments, with travel industry, they started to think, okay, but we have to build this foundation now, because when the war is over and the airspace reopens, what will we do with 7.6 million tourists? And it might be even more, nobody knows. So we are currently working on the project that is both repositioning domestic travel for Ukrainians as a means of mental health recovery and physical recovery, because living in the full-scale war is stressful, I can tell you that, but also building this foundation to reopen income and tourism in the future. So my, I think, final remarks in conclusion that Fernando's and his team's research is really practical for all of this policy decisions and policies inside. And we are very grateful that you share with us the research second year in a row.
Thank you, Maria. And there is just one question which I will ask you quickly, Fernando, although we are due to finish the session. And there's obviously somebody in the room for Latin America, and they couldn't see many results from Latin American countries.
Mm-hmm. Well, Reputation Lab has it's an international company, but we have a base in Latin America. And, apart from this ranking with the 60 countries with the largest GDP, where we have some Latin American countries, but just the largest one, we have analyze as well the 20 countries, the 20 most relevant countries in Latin America. So we do have those data
Separately.
and we will present them later in the year. We will do a specific analysis, including the 20 leading Latin American economies, but measured not only among the G7 population, but also among the in Latin America by Latin American people, by the people, the inhabitants from the key countries in the region. So we do have that information. Well, I have to say that for today's data, Peru is the country that has the highest reputation in the region, with a clear increase from the previous years. Last year we saw an increase of the reputation of Brazil, but this year the gap between Peru and Brazil has increased. And well, we can enter in a lot of details over there. Normally, there are other smaller countries that are not in this ranking that has positive reputations, such as Costa Rica, such as Uruguay. But we will see that a little bit later in the year. I do not want to advance.
Maybe that would be one of the articles that you can
here
publish.
You have the 6-7 countries from the region that are the largest ones.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fernando. Thank you so much, Maria, for joining us. And thank you for everybody who has tuned in today. The session has been recorded, so we will make that available if you wish to rewatch or share it with your colleagues. But for now, thank you very much, everybody. And we're tuning out. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.